Okay. We are at part 9. I wonder if I can finish this before... for this whole part. The epilogue. The sun was setting sooner every day. Autumn was the busy season for Geeb, so it was a season when tax office officials came and the harvest festival was performed. So all those who had gathered in the nobles' quarter to welcome Georgine from Ehrenbach now needed to hurry back to their respective provinces. Oh boy. If you guys remember this one, these are Shikikoza's parents. Daldolf. Viscount Daldolf was one such noble. Had his province been nearby, it would have been best for him to return by carriage alongside his luggage. But he was in a hurry, and traveling by high beast was a much faster option. Gloria, my apologies, but there is much work at home that only I, as the Geeb, can do. Could you ride home to Daldolf with the carriages while I return first by high beast? Of course, have a safe trip, dear. Viscountess Gloria replied with a smile. She would have preferred to hurry home on a high beast too, but she understood the importance of getting the luggage back safe and sound. Thank you. I simply don't want to leave Jeremias home alone for too long. I'm counting on you. Jeremias. Gloria lowered her eyes a little upon hearing the name. He was the son of her husband's previous first wife. Ooh! Okay, interesting. So, what is she, the second wife, or is she now the first wife? Previous first wife. Okay, so now she's the first wife, okay. And while she had plotted to have him disinherited and her own son take his place as successor, this had ultimately ended with Shikikoza's execution. Ha ha! She masked the pain and despair, savoring her heart with a small smile. Certainly, you may count on me. After watching her husband and his numerous attendants fly off, Gloria left the packing of their luggage to the attendants and servants who managed their winter mansion. Gloria climbed into a carriage loaded with luggage and began her trip home to Daldolf. There wasn't much to do as it bounced and roused along the path, and as she gazed endlessly at the window and let thoughts of the past run through her mind, the world was unkind to her, and she hated it more than she could even ever say. All I want to do is avenge Shikikoza's death, but I am not even allowed that one comfort. Well, dude, if you do not realize it, hello? He attacked his own charge that he was supposed to protect. Didn't matter if she was commoner or archnoble, it didn't matter. He went against the one order he was given as a knight, and that order came from Lord Ferdinand himself. A former knight, and, well, yeah, the one with the highest status. So, yeah, he kind of fucked up. It's your own son's fault. Okay, she is the second wife, okay. Or she was the second wife, okay. Soon after Gloria had married Viscount Daldolf as his second wife and given birth to their son Shikikoza, they found that the child lacked the mind necessary to be called a men noble. Her husband thus presented her with 3 choices. Make him a servant of the estate, offer him up to lay nobles for adoption, or send him to the temple. In the end, she decided to send him to the temple, convinced that doing so would give her an opportunity to converse with Besenwants, the high bishop at the time, and through him, form a connection with the Archduke's mother, Veronica. It was especially important to cultivate a good relationship with Besenwants so that they could ask him to prioritize Daldolf when it came to distributing mana. And so, Gloria made contact with Veronica, doing everything she could for Shikikoza through Besenwants. She was desperate to keep her son as someone important to Daldolf. I struggled considerably at the time, but it was all worthwhile. Her efforts ultimately paid off. She strengthened her bond with Veronica and brought prosperity to Daldolf, while the death of Jeremiah's mother... Oh, okay, that's what happened. Okay. Led to her becoming the first wife. Okay, so in order for Georgine to have become the first wife, the other 2 previous wives had to have died, correct? I wonder what happened. Was it natural causes? Did someone kill them? And I'm assuming that Georgine had a hand in it at some point if that was the case. Because, I mean, she stands to gain everything from their deaths. So, yeah. The Civil War and the Sovereignty also happened at about the same time, and the extraordinary repercussions permitted Shikikoza to enter the Royal Academy. It was a blessing unthinkable in normal times. Her child went from being a blue priest to a noble recognized as the son of Viscount Daldo's first wife. All that remained was to disinherit Jeremias and make Shikikoza our successor. That was the only thing left to do, and yet, mere days after successfully convincing Veronica to support this transfer of power, Shikikoza was executed because of an apprentice blue shrine maiden of commoner birth. Gloria's future vanished in an instant as though it had been swallowed by the goddess of chaos, leaving her in complete darkness. Why wasn't the commoner executed instead? Why was my noble son forced to guard that filthy lesser being? Oh, shut up! You do realize that his boss gave him an order, regardless of her status, and he fucked up. That was his own fault. Whether she was a commoner or archnoble status, he still fucked up by doing the one thing he wasn't supposed to do. She pleaded to everyone she could, asking for their support, but Shikikoza's charges were already set in stone. Both he and his family's honor were protected due to the death being framed as having occurred on duty on the condition that they never bother the shrine maiden again. Ha ha! But Gloria wasn't satisfied in the least. Seething hatred for all those involved festered in her heart, growing stronger by the day. She hated the commoner shrine maiden for what she had done to her son. Like I said, that was his own fault. Ferdinand for having ordered him to protect such a filthy commoner in the first place, and Sylvester for decreeing that he be executed. Well, it's too bad! Sylvester's the Archduke and you have to listen to him. So shut it! And yet any opportunity for revenge vanished with her husband ordered that she never approach the commoner shrine maiden. When winter socializing came around, she searched for anyone else interested in harming the girl who had so gravely wronged her, but nobody was willing to actively work against someone who had been placed under the High Priest's protection. Ha! Nobody except Veronica, that is, because she too hated Ferdinand. Her support would ultimately be given as a way of antagonizing him. Though Gloria didn't mind as long as it meant the shrine maiden would suffer as well. But she was denied even that small satisfaction. Ha ha! Yeah, too bad for you, you lose. A crucial blunder resulted in Veronica getting arrested after inviting Count Vindewald into Ehrenfest, while the commoner child, who was supposed to have been kidnapped, was instead baptized as the Knight Commander's daughter for some unfathomable reason. She was even adopted by the Archduke right after. Why? Why was a commoner apprentice shrine maiden baptized as the Knight Commander's daughter? Why was she adopted by the Ob himself and given the honor of joining the Archducal family, putting her above even me in status? Well, for one, her abundance of mana. She has a ton of it. I don't even know how much she's got. And she's still a kid. She still has to grow, and then it'll grow with her. Who knows how much she'll have when she comes of age? And, yeah. Shut it. To Gloria, there was nothing more intolerable than that. It was an atrocity that dishonored every noble in Ehrenfest. She was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that both the Ob and the Knight Commander had plotted to execute her son for some heinous reason. Perhaps even the Ob is being manipulated by Ferdinand. Veronica often spoke about how dangerous that man is, after all. Oh, shut it. She was just jealous. Veronica had been the only one to consider Ferdinand dangerous after he entered the temple, and now Gloria knew that she had been right all along. Had Lady Georgine become Ob Ehrenfest instead of Lord Sylvester, she never would have done something so foolish as adopting a commoner into the Archducal family. More than likely, yeah, she probably wouldn't have. Gloria still resented beyond words that the previous Archduke had chosen Sylvester to be his heir. Lady Georgine was much better suited to the title. Not only was she beautiful, but she was a master at orchestrating clever schemes. If she had become the Ob, the Les gangs would have been eliminated in no time at all, and her return to Ehrenfest must have reminded countless other nobles of that truth. Oh no, please don't do all this stupid stuff. Many in Ehrenfest still believed it with all their hearts. Even now, more than a decade after her departure, Sylvester had severed his primary support base by imprisoning his mother Veronica, and as far as Gloria knew, that meant Georgine now had more supporters among the nobility than he did. It doesn't matter. He's still the Archduke, and you go against him, and, well, Shikikoza got what the punishment would have been. But, yeah. She kind of deserved it, considering she ended up, she did crimes. Of course, if you do crimes and you're caught, you're gonna get in trouble for it. And you're gonna get punished. As Gloria stewed in her hate, a white bird faced the wall of the carriage, transforming into a letter before dropping onto her lap. It was a form of ordnance often used when the correspondence was best kept private, so she picked it up and began to read. The message was from Royella, the wife of Viscount Gerlach, revealing that she had received a letter from Georgine so important that it would shape the very future of Ehrenfest. Oh no. I hate that so much. She wished to discuss it with Gloria and was thus inviting her to Gerlach. Who was Viscount Gerlach? Was that the one who was interested in mine and they had her cover her face? Or am I thinking of somebody else? In an instant, the waves of ardent frustration crashing against Gloria's heart calmed. When she had bemoaned her suffering to Georgine at a tea party during her visit, the woman had merely responded with a sad smile, saying that although she was the first wife of Ehrenbach and wanted to help, she could not risk interfering in Ehrenfest politics so directly. What in the world had changed her mind? Perhaps that reply was only lip service in case a spy from the Ob was listening. Considering how cautious she was, that would make perfect sense. Georgine was the one woman Gloria considered worthy of dedicating her heart and soul to. She was her one true mistress, and if she had important plans concerning Ehrenfest, then she would put all else aside and speed to Gerlach as soon as possible. But once she was back at Daldorf, she couldn't simply leave again. Now was her best opportunity while she was still traveling alone by carriage. Oh my, I do believe I've fallen rather ill. Perhaps the shaking of the carriage has proven too much for me to handle right now. You, make the necessary arrangements for me to stay a few nights at a nearby inn. Gloria instructed one of her attendants, planning to sneak off to Gerlach on Highbeast. Upon arriving at Gerlach's summer mansion, Gloria was taken to a guest parlor where she found about 10 nobles engaging in relaxed conversation. They were all allies who likewise considered Georgine their mistress, and so she promptly spoke the greeting for reunions to them. Hello, Lord Grossum, or was that the one that was interested in mine? I don't remember. Lady Royella, Dragoner, the goddess of time, has answered my prayers and woven the threads of our fates together once again. Neither did I think it would happen so soon. Indeed, Lady Gloria, not even in my wildest dreams did I expect to receive a letter from Lady Georgine so soon. Royella said with a happy, elegant smile as she offered her a seat. It seemed that Georgine had sent the message before crossing the duchy's southern border gate and having her communications blocked. If only she had come directly to Gerlach so that we could discuss matters further, she continued with a sigh. Here we can speak freely without having to worry about spies from the Archduke, unlike in the nobles' quarters. Grossum patted his wife on the back and laughed. I can hardly blame her for being so secretive. This is grave enough that she can't even let those in Ehrenbach know about it. Lady Georgine has always been a careful one. They were both in such a light-hearted mood that whatever the news was, it must have been good. Gloria thus asked about the letter, deep down envying Royella for having a husband who understood her so well. Lady Royella, may I ask you to share the joy with us? I'd rather you not keep Lady Georgine's news between you and your husband. Wait just a moment, I shall read it now. Royella replied, causing everyone present to fall silent and listen intently. If one were to remove all the colorful decorative language, the message could be described quite simply as thus. It seems that I've happened upon the path to Ehrenfest's foundation. Whatever shall I do? What? I'm confused and I'm a little scared. Is that even a question? Lady Georgine must use this opportunity to obtain Ehrenfest's foundation for herself. Gloria declared, all those around her nodding firmly in agreement. Observing this, Royella smiled and hugged the letter to her chest. Oh no. I actually got myself spoiled on something that happens later. And now I have a feeling this is what causes that to happen. I'm not going to mention what it is. But Rosemont has to do something about it to prevent something else, to prevent that from being, well, bad. Indeed, everyone here feels the same way as us, Lady Gloria, but nearly 20 years have passed since Lady Georgine was wed to Ehrenbach. She has spent too much time away. No matter how fervent our wishes, the other nobles simply lack our passion, and Lady Georgine would never be allowed to return to Ehrenfest under normal circumstances. Grossum nodded and stood up, his fist tightly clenched. But now things are different, he said, looking over his guests with blazing, hopeful eyes. Lord Sylvester's support base was expected to be ironclad once the previous Ob climbed the towering staircase, but that could not be further from the truth. The political situation in Ehrenfest is volatile and unstable. Why? Because Lady Veronica was in prison last spring. He no longer has the firm pillar of support that he once did, and in these unpredictable times, Lady Georgine has discovered the path to Ehrenfest Foundation. I'm really hoping they don't mean the Foundation magic. This must be the divine guidance of the gods. Oh, shut up! His heated speech stirred Gloria's heart. Veronica adored Sylvester, and if she had remained in a position of power, it was true that Georgine would have had no opportunity to return. But now that she was imprisoned, Sylvester's support base was wavering. They now had a chance, a window of opportunity in which Georgine had discovered the very path to the Foundation. I'm really willing to bet that they mean the Foundation magic for Ehrenfest. And that makes sense, but I thought only the Ob was supposed to know about this. Such splendidly good fortune could not be a mere sequence of coincidences. The gods wished for Lady Georgine to become Ob Ehrenfest, and all those present had that belief carved deeply into their minds. Oh, shut it. That is not true. Lady Georgine is cautious. She will not make a move unless her success is guaranteed. Raella continued, it was for this reason that we must show her ourselves that her return is feasible. Now is our greatest opportunity to shake Ehrenfest to its core. Luckily for us, it was written in her letter that she will be returning the summer of next year thanks to an invitation from Lord Wolfried. Everyone immediately leaned forward, discussing what they might do to destabilize Ehrenfest and encourage Georgine's return. How stable is Lord Sylvester's rule? What openings are there to exploit? Grossum mused aloud. Experimentation will certainly be necessary at first. But if we can show the other nobles how brittle Lord Sylvester's central support base is, it will put us in a much stronger position to convince the neutral nobles. Lady Georgine will certainly enjoy that. Let us begin by testing the quality of the Archducal family, the skills of their retainers, and Lord Sylvester's ability to control the aftermath of a disaster. We can report our findings to Lady Georgine, and perhaps that will influence her decision come next summer. At the moment, nobody knew whether Georgine would move to seize control of the Foundation. Oh, it is what I'm thinking, yeah. Or whether she would determine it's safer to hold back. But either way, it would not be simple for her to return to Ehrenfest as its new Ob. Not only did she need to be freed from her position as Ehrenbach's first wife, she would also need more supporters. Yeah, she kind of got married, and that's not good. She won't be able to come back with that chain still keeping her back. Obtaining the support of the Veronica faction will be the simplest method to grow her support base. Perhaps we could exploit Lord Wolfried to that end? No! I think this is what I'm talking about! Oh my god! We trick him into dishonoring himself, then save him and earn his favor, which would make him more susceptible to manipulation in the future, Raella continued. Marrying him to Lady Georgine's granddaughter would be a simple way to keep other nobles in check, too, and if we ever run out of use for him, he can very easily be eliminated. Sylvester would not agree to that. And wait, Lady Georgine's granddaughter? She's a grandmother? Jesus Christ. She was only gone 20 years. It was well known that Veronica had doted on Wilfrid, and so getting him on their side would possibly lead other nobles to follow suit and join him. Lord Wolfried is certainly worth exploiting, but what about that commoner child, Rosemine? You're not getting her. Gloria asked, much more invested in eliminating her. I doubt Lady Georgine considers her important to her plans. She couldn't help but feel that if they would just kidnap Rosemine, she could torture the girl to her heart's content and finally bring peace to the wrath that tormented her so. Sensing Gloria's wrathful emotions, Grossum waved a hand to calm her down. In order to prevent the resistance of the Lies gangs and make it known to all how foolish it was for them to make Rosemine the hope of their house, it is necessary that we publicize her commoner origins and restore Besenwant's honor. Great! That's gonna pop up. Oh wait, there's a freaking magic contract going around. Is that gonna cause anything for them? I kind of hope so, considering, I'm hoping that it has the desired effect that, it could kill them. Then again, yeah, because it can affect others that are not involved in the signing of the contract, so yeah. Then once that is done, we may treat her like any commoner who has deceived nobles deserves to be treated. And by that, you mean... Grossum narrowed his gray eyes and slowly stroked his chin before speaking in a monotonous, fairly disinterested tone. We can chain her up and continuously drain her of the bountiful mana that secured her position as the Archduke's adopted daughter. Sail her away in the temple as a breed... No! Hell no! But yeah, how's it even going to work considering nobody's probably even, one, close to her mana capacity at this point, except Ferdinand. Ferdinand's not going to do that. Two, she's a child. She's not going to be able to have kids anytime soon, even if she wanted to. Because she's not even hit puberty yet. Three, you'd probably kill her before that even happened. As a breeding sow for producing children with high quantities of mana, train her as a devouring soldier. The possibilities are endless and each one will certainly be deserved. Plus, if she ever breaks, we need only turn her into a phase stone. Huh? How would that work? With that, Rayella clapped her hands together in southern realization. Lady Georgine said that Ehrenbach was struggling a little with mana due to the matters related to the Civil War. Perhaps we could hand her over to them? They would at least partially compensate for Lady Georgine's return. If everything went well, an excellent member of the Archducal family would be returning to Ehrenfest. Ehrenbach would surely need some mana support to fill the gap she left behind. Grossum nodded. We'll need to ask Lady Georgine her thoughts first, but that is not a bad idea at all. There are some obstacles to overcome, however. That child holds herself up in the temple and rarely leaves Lord Ferdinand, a man so extraordinarily competent that Veronica has spent the past decade fearing him above all others, is personally protecting her. Not even other members of the Lies Gang faction can easily approach her despite supposedly being part of her family. Yeah, that's Rosemary's family members, yeah. We cannot even be certain how much truth there is to the rumor about her ill health. It could be that they are merely claiming she is weak to minimize her contact with the nobility, one noble said. We simply lack too much information here. His arms crossed, Grossum drummed a finger against his triceps as he always did when deep in thought. An unusual sense of determination was clear in his eyes, likely due to this being a rare opportunity to work for Georgine's benefit. If what we have heard from Lord Sylvester's retainers is correct, then Lord Ferdinand is as exceedingly dangerous as one would expect from an individual who maintained first place in the Royal Academy throughout his entire time there, he eventually said. I myself have rarely spoken to him, so I am uncertain how true those rumors are, but very likely he will interfere with our plots and put a stop to any that come to his attention. Yep, you can bet your booty on that one. Welcoming Georgine back to Ehrenfest would mean dethroning Sylvester, and as Ferdinand fully supported the current Archduke, there would be no avoiding his opposition. Oh, definitely on that one. Perhaps we should make our move when they are both forced to leave the temple for some religious ceremony or another. That should limit what Ferdinand could do against us. Rayella cocked her head thoughtfully. The Harvest Festival is coming up soon. I imagine that with how few blue priests there are at the moment, both Lord Ferdinand and Lady Rosamine will need to leave the temple to personally oversee it themselves. Hold on, but then we'll be stuck in Gerlach. Grossum replied with a slight grimace. He wanted to help Georgina so much that anything holding him back cut deep, and those present couldn't help but smile a little at how dedicated he was. Lord Grossum, another noble, interjected. I am not a Geeb, and thus I will be able to move freely during the Harvest Festival. Our goal here is to observe how the Ob and his supporters respond to what we do, so we can keep things small, correct? With that in mind, I believe it would be best if only those of us who live in the Nobles' Quarter act. That will minimize how much can be traced back to Lady Georgine. Doing anything that would put Sylvester and his supporters on guard too much would not be ideal while Georgine's intentions are still up in the air. They needed to make whatever they did look like as much of an accident as possible, all while leaving an extremely minimal connection to her. Grossum gave another nod. Indeed, our goal is to harm the Ob, destabilize its faction, and show that there is an opening to exploit, such that Lady Georgine steals her resolve to return. It is not necessary for us to implement any life-or-death traps here. We shall prioritize setting multiple cunning ones that when strung together are quite unbreakable, he said, an amused grin spreading across his lips. He was no doubt running several potential plots through his head at that very moment. And Rayella could hardly remember the last time she had seen her husband so lively. Is Lord Wilfrid our target this time? she asked, gracefully tilting her head once more. I imagine destabilizing Lord Sylvester's faction through his biological son will have a much greater impact than using his adopted daughter. Lord Sylvester has always been weak to those precious to him being put in danger, Grossman said with a laugh. Attack him directly, and he remains steadfast, but target his family, and he is much more likely to bend. More opinions were shared, and plans were slowly woven together. Gloria, of course, wanted to participate in the plot against Sylvester since she had ordered Shikiko's execution, or since he had ordered it. But as the first wife of a Gabe, it will be hard for her to leave Daldorf. I suppose I will need to continue waiting before I can hurt the commoner then. That's a shame, but now I'm one step closer than before, when I could do nothing at all, and once Sylvester is dethroned, there will be nobody to protect that commoner shrine maiden. How I pray that my dreams will soon come true. Your dreams are not going to come true, little lady. Not if everybody else has anything to say about it. Okay, this is a virus story. Okay. How far have I gotten? Okay. Tea party. Charlotte, Melchior, whatever. I'm going to work now. Listen well to your nanny and be good children. Yes, mother. Bye-bye. I spoke to my children in the morning, as always, hugging them both before standing up and reluctantly leaving the room. Every time I saw their cute smiles, the fact that I could not do the same for Wilfried sent a pang of regret through my chest. Cursed be his grandmother. The very moment 2 seasons had passed, the time period during which it was considered essential for mothers to feed their children directly, Veronica had snatched Wilfried away to raise him for herself. From then until his baptism, Wilfried had been in a position where I could only hug him at dinner. I suppose I should be grateful that I had regained the ability to raise him at all, I mused. I had Rosemine to thank for that. She was the reason that Veronica, the woman who had antagonized me for my wedding day, complaining that Sylvester was supposed to have taken his first wife from Ehrenbach, was imprisoned. His first wife from Ehrenbach? I wonder who she had in mind for that. Better not have been Georgine. That would have been nasty. Nasty! Actually, it wouldn't have been able to happen anyway because they both shared a mother and father. Okay, so yeah. Plus, she had produced such an endless stream of popular trends that shifting the allegiances of noblewomen in the subsequent fallout became simple work. But not even that was the most important thing Rosemine had done for me. She had also saved Wilfrid from being disinherited after he failed to receive the upbringing necessary of a noble of the archducal family. In my eyes, she was less the saint of Ehrenfest and more my very own saint. My savior. I had doubted my ears when Sylvester said that he would be adopting a daughter from Karstedt, considering it could hardly be said that he was raising his own children properly. Rosemine's extraordinary qualities became obvious as soon as I met her. She was beautiful, had an immense quantity of mana, astonishing quick-thinking skills, a knack for conceptualizing new inventions that instantly became trends, the motivation to actually create those inventions, and a deeply compassionate heart. She was so feeble that she seemed to end up on the verge of death if one so much as looked away from her for a moment. Working quickly to secure and protect her for the duchy's sake was a rare instance of Sylvester making a very wise decision, in my opinion. Yay! She supports it! Woo! Thank God for that! Rosemine's got some freaking support in the archducal family, thank God. Not all of it, of course, considering if Georgine has anything to say about it. Today, I will be having a tea party with Georgine, our visitor from Ehrenbach. Sylvester had begged me to attend alongside him, and while I agreed, I can hardly say I was particularly enthusiastic about it. Wait, I thought men weren't allowed to join tea parties. Anyway, whatever. I already struggled to face her because of how much she resembles Veronica, and not to mention, I am quite concerned about the smile Lady Georgine gave Wilfrid during her welcoming feast. It simply will not leave my mind. You're right to be nervous about it, Florencia. I'm going to make sure Wilfrid doesn't see her again, so seeing her off will be the last time they meet. Same goes for Rosemine too, of course. It concerned me that Sylvester was so on guard against Georgine, considering how soft he usually was on his family. I still could not believe how long he had allowed Besenwast and Veronica to wreak havoc. Sylvester, why is it that you were so guarded against Georgine? I don't want my children to go through what I did, he said, going on to explain that while he was struggling with the intense upbringing demanded of the next of, his older sister Georgine had tormented him endlessly. Looking back, I can understand how she must have felt, when her whole life was taken from her and all her efforts disrespected, but from when I moved to the northern building after my baptism to when she departed for Ehrenbach, she never stopped antagonizing me. While Sylvester was outwardly maintaining his calm, I could tell that the years of torment had left gaping wounds in his heart. The trauma from his childhood had yet to fade. Goodness, this man. He truly is an overgrown child, having been raised with his mother's distorted love, but never given help when he truly needed it. Take this and follow us, Sylvester instructed an attendant, gesturing toward a box. He then stood up, prompting me to stand as well. Guess I've got to speak to Georgine about Besenwatz's mother. This isn't going to be fun. I know only a fraction of the circumstances, and having an outsider such as myself intervene in family matters will simply throw his discussion into chaos. This duty is yours, and yours alone, Sylvester, but I will be there with you, so please stay strong. With that, I gave Sylvester a kiss on the cheek, hoping to raise his spirits as much as I could. I think that's the first sign of affection anyone's given their spouse that I've seen in the books, besides possibly, I don't know, has Otto shown any affection to Karina? Besides the off-screen to where they had the baby. And same for Gunter and Effa to having Camille. I don't know. Anybody noticed anything? I'd love to hear it. We made our way to the tea party, arm in arm, sitting next to one another when we arrived, and with Georgine seated across from us, the proceedings began. Sylvester did not wish to reveal Ehrenfest's growing assets to Ehrenbach, and so we were serving traditional followed honey pies as sweets. They are made with honey-soaked follow filling, and when cut into, they would often fall apart in a way that made them visibly unappealing. Nobles used this opportunity to show off just how skilled their attendants were, having them expertly slice the sweets in a way that preserved their beauty before serving them. Eating them gracefully was equally as important, being an essential skill for any fine noblewoman. Rosamund would have her chefs make them in bite-sized pieces to begin with, but this was its more traditional form. Focusing on my hands, I deftly cut into the pile of my cutlery before taking a demonstrative bite for Georgine. Doing so actually made me feel a little nostalgic since I had quite regularly been enjoying Rosamund's recipes as of late. Sylvester, you do know that I came here to visit our uncle's grave, correct? How long do you intend to make me wait before taking me there? Georgine asked, shooting him a stern look with an elegantly furrowed brow as she sipped her tea. Sylvester briefly glanced over at me for assistance, but then clenched his fists and looked Georgine head on. Our uncle was executed as a criminal. Count Groschel, the patriarch of his home family, has said that they are in no way responsible for someone who has been removed from their family for the temple so many decades ago. The refusal means he has no grave. Ooh. And I also remember that traitors normally, if he was executed as a criminal, how was he executed? Was it beheading? Was it the way they did with Haas? Because if it was the way they did with Haas, he's definitely not going to have a grave anyway. Because he won't have a body to bury. I mean, they could still have a grave marker to show him, but I guess they didn't. Executed, you say? Georgine asked. She had been informed of Besenwatz's death by a letter from the temple, but knew no more than that. We had, of course, hidden such details during the Archduke conference, since it could hardly be made public that one of our family members had waited for the absence before deliberately stirring up trouble. Georgine clenched her fist, fixing Sylvester with a harsh glare that made it clear she was demanding answers. He stiffened, grinding his teeth at the sight, before taking a deep breath and putting on the stern expression of an archduke. He disobeyed my orders and prompted my mother to forge official documents allowing a noble of another duchy into the city, an act that devolved into violence and caused conflict. I could see his fist shaking on his lap as he spoke. I slid my hand over his, turning it over so that I could intertwine our fingers. Sylvester, everything will be okay. As I stroked his hand with my thumb, I could feel the tension drain from him ever so slightly. I am confident that, as the first wife of Ehrenbach, you must know how grave of a crime it is for the Archduke's seal to be used while he is absent for the Archducal Conference, Sylvester continued. Please, I want you to understand. Georgine lowered her eyes at a thin sigh and then slowly raised her head. Despite my sorrow, I understand that you had no choice but to execute him. Did you save any of his belongings, Sylvester? I have much under my possession. You may take whatever you like. Yes, I believe I shall. It appeared the box Sylvester had made his attendant carry contained Besenwatz's former belongings. The box inside also contains the letters you sent him. He stored and treasured every single one in the temple. Ferdinand sent them to me the other day. Oh my, you read those? How embarrassing! Georgine gave a small smile before taking out the box of letters and an ornately decorated ink bottle. Goodness, to think Uncle used these until the very end, she whispered. Judging by her response, it was safe to say that she had gifted Besenwants the ink bottle before being married away to Ehrenbach. Her eyes crinkled nostalgically as she looked over it, and the look on her face as she touched the bundled-up letters gave her the countenance of an exceptionally loving woman. The kind smile she wore appeared so genuine that it made the cold grin she had given Wolfried and the abuse she had forced upon Sylvester almost come across as uncharacteristic mistakes of some kind. I only ever met the High Bishop during ceremonies, and despite Besenwants not even being a noble, he had joined Veronica in lecturing me at length about the duties of a wife. So it was safe to say that my feelings toward him were by no means fond ones. He was considered such a disgrace that even his own family rejected his remains following his execution. Okay, so it wasn't at Haas, okay. So at the very least, it was relieving to know that someone in the world cared for him. He committed the crime by enlisting Mother's help then. Where is she now? I thought it strange that she was not present during the welcoming feast, but it would not have been proper to ask about her there. She's being imprisoned for the same crime. Right now she's in the Forest Ivory Tower. I would like to meet with her. Not happening. Sylvester's scowl deepened as he shook his head. Those who had committed treason against the Archduke were not allowed visitors, to prevent both escape and murder. She committed treason. You can't see her. I'm not suggesting that we speak to one another. I simply wish to see with my own eyes the conditions she's living in. Surely you understand that a child would naturally want to see their mother. Would you not make the same request if you were in my position? Georgine asked, glaring at him. I am the first wife of Ehrenbach. She may be my mother, but I would not help a criminal charged with such a grave crime to escape. Nor would I ask for her punishment to be lessened. I don't know whether to believe her or not. Is she speaking the truth on this one? I will permit you to see her, but only if you wear staff-stealing bracelets. Staff-stealing bracelets were magic tools put on nobles who had committed crimes, and so the name implied, they sealed away one's staff such that they could not cast magic. Sylvester was indirectly refusing Georgine by saying that she would need to undergo the same restrictions as a criminal, but she merely gave him a cool smile and extended her shapely wrists. Very well then. Okay, so she's willing to do it. Okay. With a bitter frown, Sylvester secured a bracelet around each of Georgine's wrists. He might have been remembering the time he put them on his own mother. And so we took Georgine to the Ivory Tower. It stretched above the nobles' forest, existing to seal away nobles who had committed treason against the Archduke. Upon our arrival, we headed for the door that was farthest inside. Aside from the bars, the room behind it was just like that of any other noble, with Veronica sitting inside wearing a pair of staff-stealing bracelets. Just like the ones on Georgine. Okay, so she's still wearing them, of course. What am I saying? Of course she's going to be. Veronica looked up at the sound of the opening door, then abruptly got to her feet and raced over to the bars. Georgine! Despite being in prison, she was still the Archduke's mother, so she wasn't being mistreated in the slightest. Both her clothes and hair were finely done like always. You must return Sylvester to his senses, Georgine. Tell him to let me out. Ferdinand is manipulating him. Please, Georgine, save me. Georgine listened quietly to her mother's desperate pleas and turned away. Her promise had been to see Veronica without saying a word, and she kept it. That will be enough, Sylvester. Sylvester nodded silently and started to walk away with Georgine and me following behind him. But Veronica's cries did not stop. Georgine! Georgine! She wailed. Soon enough, Georgine stopped and turned around, meeting my gaze with a smile. I am just glad to have seen my mother again. My apologies for forcing this on to you, Florencia. Think nothing of it. I understand how concerned you must be. Her eyes then shifted slowly to Veronica, who was continuing to scream, and the smile on her lips changed ever so slightly. This smile was far from one of relief, and the sight alone sent a chill down my spine. Oh no! I'm so glad she notices the subtle changes, or else this probably would have gone over their heads. Thank you for coming. Today I was having a tea party with Elvira, who had been entrusted with playing the role of Rosamund's mother. She had given me much support since I first married Sylvester back in the day. I knew little about Ehrenfest when I married into the duchy from Frembateg, but she taught me much about the culture here, allowing me to enter her lead faction and protected me throughout no matter what happened. Though I would never tell Sylvester that I found Elvira to be I cannot talk. I find Elvira to be more reliable than him. He would get ever so jealous. Once the tea and sweets were prepared, I sent away our attendants and extended a sound-blocking magic tool to Elvira, since we absolutely could not risk anyone hearing us. I silently brought my tea to my lips, took a sweet, and then offered one to my guest, who likewise sipped her drink. "This is about Lady Georgina, I imagine," she said with a gentle smile after setting down her teacup. "It is. I imagine you know a lot more about this matter than I do, Elvira. My apologies for always relying on you so heavily." "Oh, there's no need to apologize. After all, our faction exists to help its members. I must say, though, Lady Georgina has been quite active during her time here. Just yesterday she attended a tea party held by the former Lady Veronica faction," she said with an exasperated though somewhat impressed sigh. Veronica's faction had rapidly lost influence following her imprisonment, but Georgina's visit was reviving their momentum rapidly and without warning. "Her faction abounds with nobles connected to Ehrenbach, correct? They are all desperate to deepen their bonds with Lady Georgina, and if she intends to exert her influence here, meeting with old friends is going to prove essential." The connection between Ehrenfest and Ehrenbach had weakened considerably with Veronica's arrest, so it was possible that Georgina was looking to strengthen her connections with houses that would support her now that she was her duchy's first wife. "It seems that Viscountess Daldorf told her many things indeed at yesterday's tea party," Elvira said. "I must say I am worried for Rosemine." "Viscountess Daldorf? The mother of the knight executed about 2 years ago for disobeying orders?" "Indeed, Lord Ferdinand ordered the knight to protect Lady Rosemine. An apprentice blew shrine maiden at the time, but he instead wounded her with his staff and threw the whole entire situation into chaos. He was a fool, and she is his unfortunate mother." The Viscountess had spread rather malicious rumors about Rosemine. That was what Elvira had been told by one of her lay noble allies. "Do you remember that Viscountess Daldorf was quite close to the former High Bishop, who asserted to all he would listen that Rosemine was a commoner?" "Yes, I seem to recall her often asking Besenwa's for assistance after her son entered the temple. Besenwas was Lady Veronica's only brother from the same mother, after all." Elvira frowned in concern. "If there were nothing more to all this, then the disobedient knight would clearly be at fault, and there would be nothing for us to worry about," she said, lowering her eyes before speaking again. "Rosemine is deeply connected to the death of not only Viscountess Daldorf's son, but Besenwas as well. Ob Ehrenfest is firmly denying all rumors that she is a commoner. But there is no way to hide her involvement in Besenwas' death. I have no idea whatsoever how this knowledge will make Lady Georgina feel, nor what she will decide to do about it." A sigh escaped me as I remembered how Georgina had looked while holding Besenwas' belongings. It was hard to imagine her eventual emotional outpour not being directed at Rosemine. "I know, it's not going to be good. She's going to go after Rosemine at some point." "So, Elvira, I did attend the Royal Academy while Lady Georgina was there, briefly. But when it came to people from Ehrenfest, I must admit that I only remembered Constance. From your perspective, what kind of person is Lady Georgina?" There were gatherings for Archduke candidates within the Royal Academy, so while I had certainly crossed paths with Lady Georgina before, I barely remembered anything about her. Perhaps that was due to the age difference between juniors and seniors, or because Constance had so thoroughly doted on me after becoming romantically involved with my older brother. Wait, is Constance Sylvester's other sister? Oh, if that is the case, cool. She is prideful and a hard worker, but perhaps due to sharing Lady Veronica's blood, she shows no mercy whatsoever towards those she deems her enemies. It was for this reason that she mercilessly tormented Lord Sylvester when he was young, in an attempt to ostracize him. Such behavior is, of course, not uncommon among siblings who are fighting for the seat of Archduke, but even so, Lord Sylvester at such a young age was given the position purely based on his gender, which led to Lady Georgina's engagement being cancelled, and her getting married off to Ehrenbach as a third wife. I can only imagine how humiliating that must have been. And I understand her feelings entirely, but the hatred she unleashed upon a child who had only just been baptized was nothing but cruel. Lord Karlstadt struggled much when dealing with her. Indeed, ruling archdukes are generally preferred to ruling archduchesses. I replied it was important for a mother to preserve her mana to ensure that her children had a bountiful supply themselves, and for this reason they were required to refrain from using mana as much as possible while pregnant. This was the explanation behind an archduke being able to marry any woman he wished, as long as they possessed an equivalent monarch quantity, while an archduchess absolutely needed to marry an archduke candidate. Tradition and circumstances will in no way ease whatever emotions Lady Georgine feels right now. We must exercise the utmost caution for Lord Wilfrid, who so greatly resembles Lord Sylvester, and Rosamund, who ultimately caused Besenwant's downfall, whether it was in self-defense or not. Lady Georgine is the type to immediately hone in on any weaknesses she sees, Elvira explained. Her description truly did remind me of Veronica. I could only imagine that they had quite similar temperaments. Oh, I have to agree. I imagine that that's not going to go well. So we must be on guard against Lady Georgine wielding her power as Ehrenbach's first wife against us. Indeed, that would be wise. She did not return her to Ehrenfest a single time while third wife, but the moment she gained power, she descended upon our duchy once again. No matter how powerful of a greater duchy Ehrenbach was, a third wife did not deal in politics and would be of lower status than Ehrenfest Archduke. Elvira was insinuating that Lady Georgine had returned specifically because she was now a first wife, making her powerful enough that even Sylvester had to kneel before her. I was immediately reminded of how his fist had trembled just from facing and speaking to her. I must stay strong as well. After staying in Ehrenfest for a week, it was finally time for Lady Georgine to return to Ehrenbach. We all lined up to see her off, Rosamund and Wilfrid included, then began our lengthy farewells. I must thank you for having me here, Georgine said. If your visit brought any peace at all to your heart, Lady Georgine, then I am overjoyed beyond words. I had been cautious for so long that I honestly felt a little relieved at the thought that she would finally be gone, and as if to exploit the one moment when my guard was down, Wilfrid dashed forward with a smile. We didn't get to talk much this time, Auntie. I hope we can spend more time together soon. He had leaped from my blind spot, moving so fast that I had no opportunity to stop him. Georgine's lips curved into a grin at that suggestion. I see. I had no idea that you wished to speak with me more. In that case, perhaps I should return next year at around the same time? Yes, please. I can't wait. Wilfrid, no! Why ever would you say that? I was struck with the urge to scornfully pinch his cheek, but now was neither the time nor place for that. Instead, I clasped my hands together and somehow managed to keep a smile forced onto my face, at which point Lady Georgine looked at me and gracefully tilted her head. It would not be a bother for me to accept this invitation, would it? She asked. In truth, I wanted to reply, it would be quite the bother indeed. But I dared not speak so frankly. In a public setting such as this, there was only one answer I could possibly give. Not at all. We would love to see you again soon. Wilfrid, you foolish boy! I agree! Once Georgine's carriage was out of sight, I spun around and saw that Ferdinand was already glaring down at him, the gentle smile that was previously plastered on his face having disappeared entirely. He handed some strange fan made out of white paper to Rosamund. Do it, Rosamund. In an instant, she brought the fan down on my impudent son's head with a pleasant cracking sound. You big idiot! You shouldn't have said that. Learn to read the mood. I applauded her in my heart, for that she had said exactly what I planned to say myself. The great minds think alike on that one. For the sake of Ehrenfest's future, perhaps it is time I deeply consider having Wilfrid and Rosamund marry. No! Oh my god! I mean, I know they're not blood related, but still. Okay, here's the problem I see. Their mana capacities grow as they get older, correct? Who's to say that he won't have enough mana for her? Because you're supposed to have people who marry have a similar mana capacity to each other. What if his isn't enough? What are they going to do then? I guess they wouldn't be able to do it. Oh boy, here we go. Here we go with this. Daniel's proposal. At the Starbind ceremony came to a close, Lady Rosamund, having given a beautiful blessing as the High Bishop, gracefully exited the hall. When the doors closed behind her, the atmosphere immediately became more adult. Those who had already determined their partners introduced them to their parents and wider family, while those who were still searching received introductions from their guardians or grouped up with friends to meet new people. It was largely those inheriting their houses who received such introductions from their guardians, while second sons and such spent the time with their friends. Excuse me. I I personally needed to stay with Lady Elvira to debut the dress Lady Rosemont had designed for me, so I didn't have the opportunity to spend this time casually with my friends. They had clamored with excitement over my new outfit before I saw them off with well wishes. May the goddess of binding bless you all, and may you be blessed as well, Bridget. But as I started making my way out, the voice of Alb Ehrenfest reverberated through the hall. Silence, I have an important announcement to make today. Oh, here we go. Ferdinand's debut, I think. Not his debut, his return to noble society. What am I saying? I looked over just as the Archduke announced that Lord Ferdinand, who was standing on the stage beside him, would be returning to noble society. It was just as Lady Rosemont informed us. This news excited a commotion among the nobility. Lady Veronica had forced Lord Ferdinand into the temple after years of pushing for his expulsion. So the Ob allowing his return signaled that he was willfully ignoring her wishes. Those who had also earned the woman's ire gleefully raised their staffs in support, while those who had supported her raised their staffs as well, albeit while facing the floor and wearing tight frowns. Seeing the relative power of the faction change so drastically before my eyes caused a gasp to escape my lips, at which point Lady Elvira smoothly stepped behind me. Bridget straightened her back and smiled, she warned with a quiet whisper. The nobles in the Veronica faction will dramatically lose influence with this announcement and the confirmation that Lord Ferdinand is now Rosamond's guardian. They will need to search for new, higher status nobles to support them, which means that many will approach you with the intention of getting close to Rosamond. You must not allow their pressure to overwhelm you, nor should you concede to them. I scanned the hall to see countless eyes already fixed on me from among the crowd. The nobles my age, who had just moments ago looked upon my dress fondly, now had cold, calculating stares. There were more attention on me than I ever experienced before. As I stood in place, taken aback by the sudden change, a young man began making his way over. A familiar voice called out, but it was addressing Lady Elvira, not me. A chill ran down my spine, and I spun around just in time to see him bow his head as he started to greet her. Hashit. I guess what his name is? Hashit? He was my former fiancé. He was at first glance a genial young man with a bright smile, but in truth, his eyes showed no such kindness. His expression was just as I remembered it, and the sight alone made my hair stand on end. It seems that the goddess of time has woven the threads of Bridget's and my fate together once again. I ask for your blessing on this day, enriched with the king and queen god's divine protection, he said, trying to weasel his way into a blessing by speaking solely to Lady Elvira. But while she was currently serving as my guardian, she was purely supporting me with my dress debut. She was in no position to discuss marriage on my behalf. Not even the goddess of binding plays her tricks on a night protected by the king and queen gods. Lady Elvira responded, indirectly stating that she would permit him to speak to me, but only under her strict watch. She then took a step back, positioning herself such that she would watch us carefully. Hashit was limited on what actions he could take with her so close by, and that alone gave me a great deal of strength. I carefully looked around to see that gossip-loving nobles were all gazing our way, and in the distance, I spotted my brother weaving his way through the crowd to reach us. Please don't, brother. I speedily raised a hand to stop him. As was obvious from the results of my previous engagement being cancelled, were my brother the Gabe to fail at dealing with Hashit properly here, it would be our province that suffered the consequences. An outcome that needed to be avoided at all costs, now that we were on the cusp of getting Lady Rosamond's support. After confirming that my brother had stopped, despite his worried expression, I faced my former fiancé directly. Lord Hashit, what business might you have with me? Bridget, aren't you acting rather cold towards the man who, on the night of the star-binding, just asked your guardian for permission to speak with you? When the threads that the goddess of binding wove together for us were so tragically torn asunder, my heart froze over as though the god of blizzards had struck me himself. Don't you mean the god of life? Whatever. Hashit maintained that I had ended our engagement without even giving him a reason, breaking his heart for some selfish purpose. But in truth, I had ended it because he and his family were plotting to remove my brother from his seat and take the position of Geeb Ilgner for themselves. And now here he was, lowering his gaze with a pained expression to draw the sympathies of our audience. His bold-faced lies just made me furious. Lord Hashit, you... Bridget. No sooner had I opened my mouth to rebuke him than Lady Elvira called out from behind, snapping back to my senses. While she was watching us quietly, she was standing proudly with a composed smile that exuded control. Her warning for me to keep my back straight and continue smiling flashed in my mind. Right, I must not be overwhelmed. I must not fall victim to his play. A newfound calmness swiftly washed over me. Getting emotional here in public with so many onlookers would only give Hashit a weakness to exploit. Were all of noble society to learn that my brother, Agib, had been tricked and exploited, even more opportunistic nobles would come after Ilgnir. Everything I had done to protect it thus far would have been for naught, and so I mimicked Lady Avara's smile, masking the anger that was stirring inside me. Bridget, despite all the blows you have landed upon me, my wrathful has not yet fallen. I will still see you as Gadul, the goddess of earth, as I always have. Ew, no. While his words may have sounded like, I still love you despite how much you've hurt me, to those watching on, Hashit was actually saying that he was still after Ilgnir. Even now he was mocking me, using euphemisms that hid his intentions from everyone else. He was deriding my province for having dropped in power when countless nobles left us following my cancelled engagement, calling me a fool who had missed her chance to seize the position of Geet from my own brother, while scorning him as an incompetent failure who had been so easily fooled. But Ilgnir will not remain in its current state, not now that Lady Rosemine is giving us her support. Oh, how I yearned to rub his face in that fact, but it's still days before Lady Rosemine would formally request for paper to be made at Ilgnir. From the perspective of other nobles, my province was not receiving any support from her, and such information about this new industry was not mine to share. No matter how frail and emaciated Gadul becomes, Abigail, the god of life, never ceases to long for her touch. But it is only he who desires her, no one else. It is unlikely that Lady Rosemine, goddess of water, will continue to protect you for much longer. Why are you referring to Rosemine as the goddess of water in this? This is the second time someone has done that. Otto was the first to do that. Hashit said, maintaining his fake noble smile as he continued his stealthy barrage of abuse. He was saying that no other man would ask for my hand in marriage now that Ilgnir was struggling with fewer nobles, and I was seen as prone to ending engagements, and while I served as Lady Rosemine's guard knight and had her support now, I would need to retire upon getting married, as all female knights do. Even considering that I had served her for a year now, few expect the Archducal family to continue associating with me for very long after my retirement. Hashit spoke with the aim of discouraging those nobles who were seeking me for a connection with Lady Rosemine, but I knew that she was not such a dispassionate person. She cared even for the orphans in the temple, and she treated both her attendants and commoner merchants well. Bridget, I ask that you once again accept my raffle so that I may restore your wounded honor. I have no intention of receiving any such so-called honor from you. No matter how strongly I wanted to voice such thoughts, I couldn't allow my true feelings to show. Revealing them here would ruin the fashion debut that Lady Rosemine had entrusted me with. But I couldn't think of a good way to refuse Hashit in polite noble language. All I could do in response was press my lips together and clench my fists. Oh, were you always such a poor theologian? Lord Hashit came in a mocking voice as several male knights stepped out of the crowd. I recognized them as Daniel's friends, a group who had found the Rays Angelica's Grade Squadron so amusing that they agreed to help out by joining us for Gwenin and watching on as they quickly positioned themselves between Hashit and me. There were many who continued to yearn for Gadul, no matter how emaciated she became. Need I even mention that not only the goddess of water, but the god of fire, goddess of wind, and even the king and queen gods themselves worried for the goddess of earth and set out to search for her. Indeed, despite your bold assertions, the truth is quite the opposite, another knight continued. There were more gods who thought of Gadul when she was in poor health than not. You have no need to fear for Bridget's sake, Lord Hashit. You are not the only man who finds her attractive. Go on, Daniel, now's your time to shine. Here we go, guys! We get to see it! The knights pushed Daniel to the front of the group in an instant, at which point his gaze wandered anxiously through the crowd. Despite me doing my best to hide my emotions, it seems that they had picked up on my dissatisfaction. I instinctively placed a sheepish hand on my cheek. There was nothing more embarrassing than accidentally allowing others to see how frustrated I was. Hashit, upon seeing Daniel now standing between us, let out an exasperated sigh. You have no place here, Lay Noble. Bridget is a Mendo, but you aren't getting cocky simply because Lady Rosemine took you on as a retainer, are you? Know your place. Daniel had been awkwardly scanning his surroundings, but the moment he heard those last words, a bright glint lit his gray eyes. Oh! Yeah, because Shikikoza said the same thing to him, and now look at what happened to him! He straightened his back and faced Hashit head-on with a cool gaze. I was once punished for knowing my place and standing down, but as a knight, I must stand firm when there is someone to protect, and never again shall I turn my back on what is my duty." With that, he turned around, kneeling before me and extending a hand. "My fate crossed yours at the guidance of the king and queen gods who rule the heavens far above. I wish for you to be my goddess of light, Bridget." Oh, that's sweet. Oh my god, I want a picture. I want the picture. I want the picture. Come on. I gotta have that picture. That is so sweet. Girl, go after him. He's a sweet guy. And he's increasing his mana capacity. The proposal came as such a shock that I could do nothing but blink in surprise. It was unthinkable for Daniel to ask for my hand in marriage, both in terms of status and mana quality. I was aware he had developed feelings for me, at least to some degree, but he was no fool. He knew that it was simply not possible for us to be together, and him not voicing his affection before now was more than proof of that. And yet here he was, proposing in a public setting of all places. I had no choice but to refuse, given the disparity between us. An official marriage proposal simply could not survive. But as I looked down at him in a daze, he flashed a smile. "I understand that receiving this proposal from a lay noble will only be unsettling to you. Thus, I proclaim that by next year, I will have developed my mana quantity such that it is a proud match for yours. All I ask is that you accept no other proposals until then." Ah, so he's doing this to save me from my current situation. Well, partially. Daniel had himself addressed the mana imbalance between us, and by asking me to wait 1 year, he had given me enough leeway that I didn't need to refuse him. I could spurn Hashit's proposal and be free of this mess. Well, like I said, that's partially why he's doing it. He wants to be able to. He's saying, "Give me 1 year so I can make it so I have enough mana to satisfy, the mana issue." "My sincerest apologies, Lord Hashit. It seems that there are indeed other men who would yearn for this emaciated Geduld. The gods of time will unfortunately never weave the threads of our fates together again, but I nonetheless pray that you live well with the divine protection of the gods," I said, quashing his chances of ever speaking to me again. I then placed my hands over Daniel's. "Your proposal has brought much joy to my heart. I shall be here waiting for 1 year from now." As an impressed stir ran through the crowd, nobody believed that a lay noble such as Daniel could develop his mana quantity enough to make him compatible with the younger sister of a Geeb, such as myself, but my accepting his proposal sent a message to all those watching that I had firmly rejected Hashit for the rest of time. With Daniel's hand in mine, I stood up, walked over to Lady Elvira. "I wish to go and speak with Geeb Ilgner, if you would allow me." "But of course," she said, a satisfied smile on her face. "You have just accepted a man's yearning love. My duty as your guardian is now complete. I shall keep an eye on Hashit's response for you. Go forth to Geeb Ilgner." It seems she had appraised my behavior as suitably graceful for a garden knight serving Lady Rosamund, which was a considerable relief. "Lady Elvira, I owe you so much." Think nothing of it. I simply look forward to next year," she teased with a refined giggle. And so, with a group of knights protectively circling us, I led Daniel by the hand over to my brother. Even from a distance, I could tell he was a little relieved. "Bridget, brother, forgive me for acting on my own there," I said. I had stopped him from getting closer when he was visibly concerned and accepting Daniel's proposal on my own, ignoring the will of my house's head both times. "It's quite all right. Things ended better than they would have had I jumped in," he said, accepting my apology. He then looked toward Daniel. "You have my gratitude for bringing a peaceful end to that conflict, and for protecting my sister's honor." "Indeed, you truly saved me there, Daniel. I thank you ever so much." As my brother and I thanked him, Daniel floundered so much that it was hard to imagine he was the same man who had just so boldly faced Hashit. His eyes flitted all over the place. Well, I did have a lot of help. I could only stand there because I had my friends with me, so, I'll be taking my leave now. Then, as if to say that his job here was done, Daniel spun around and sped back to his friends. They teasingly jabbed him with their elbows as they walked over. "If only he were a med noble. Do you not think the same, Bridget?" "Goodness, brother, Daniel said all that only to assist me," I chided. "No, I think he did. He was genuine. I think he was genuine about it." The gossipy nobles seemed beyond excited to see how this would turn out next year, but I strongly doubted he would actually increase his mana quantity enough to make a marriage between us possible. When the starbinding was over, pretty much every person I knew teased me endlessly, but Daniel himself showed no signs of pursuing a romance, and so I returned to my normal life without taking his proposal very seriously at all. That is, until we made our journey to Ilgner. Lady Rosamund had selected Ilgner as the first province in which she would develop the papermaking industry, and so I returned home as her guard knight. Once there, she considerately gave me temporary leave of duty to spend time with my family, though our stay would be brief. The next day, I was serving as Lady Rosemine's guard knight, accompanying her to the mountains so that we could gather materials. Then, back at the mansion, I welcomed her as a member of the Gibbs family. It was when night fell that one of the servants assigned to Daniel came to me with something to say. Lady Bridget, I do not know why, but Lord Daniel has gone outside despite the late hour. It was already some time past 7th bell. The young Lady Rosamine was already asleep, of course. And it was late enough that the generally early to bed and early to rise residents of our province had all retired. Why exactly would Daniel be going out at this time of night? It wasn't something that I was exactly proud of, but there were so few nobles in Ilgner that there wasn't exactly much one could do. If it was his intention to cause trouble, then as a knight I needed to stop, and before anything happened, I clad myself in light armor and stepped out of the balcony. Ilgner was beyond the control of the god of darkness, and with only the moon and star providing light, I could easily see Daniel's ivory high beast and the glow of mana radiating from it. I chased after him on my own high beast. Daniel! Bridget, what brings you out at this hour? This may be your home province, but a woman shouldn't be out alone. She's going after you, you idiot! What are you doing out there? I had followed after Daniel, uneasy about what he may have been planning, but he responded so casually that it made any tension immediately drain out of my body. One of the servants told me you left. What exactly are you doing out here? My apologies. I didn't mean to worry you. The truth is, Lady Rosamine gave me some combat advice this afternoon when we were hunting the Effens. I wanted to train a little, so... With that, he trailed off, awkwardly averting his gaze. I widened my eyes in surprise. Lady Rosamine wasn't even a knight, and yet she had given him advice on how to fight? What advice was that exactly? It was about mana usage. I'm a lay noble, so I'm used to supporting other knights. My job is usually to fight the smaller enemies while everyone else gets the big ones, or buying time for my allies to heal. That kind of thing. And providing support like that means I've gotten used to using as little mana as possible so that I can fight longer. I'd never even considered a fighting style where I use a lot of mana at once, but Lady Rosamine said that I should learn, so here I am. It made sense that Daniel would have a combat style focused on fighting for as long as possible while conserving his mana. Matching our mana usage to our enemy was also the first thing we Mend Knights were taught to do. If that's your goal, then you should practice filling your staff with a swell of mana. That's what apprentice Mend Knights learn in the Knight's Order. And so I landed my high beast in the forest clearing and trained with Daniel, but something took me by surprise. It somehow felt as though he had more mana than before. Is something wrong, he asked. It seems that your mana quantity has grown a little, has it? Daniel hesitated for a moment, his eyes wavering. Only once he had checked to make sure nobody was listening did he shyly answer. As it turns out, my mana growth period is lasting a bit longer than most. The commander told me that it continues to develop even now. Never had I expected this. One's mana capacity generally stopped increasing in size once they came of age and stopped growing themselves. That makes sense! Okay, I got my answer, because I had a question on this last part, I think. I think it was last part. That, I was wondering how long, their mana capacity grows for, so now I've got an answer. Could it be? Daniel, are you sincerely intending to match my mana capacity by next year? I asked. Had his proposal on the night of the star binding been genuine and not simply a show to force Hashit to stand down? Yes! His proposal had been genuine. He does care about you. He wants to be with you. And if this is the way to do it, he is going to do it. Or he's going to try his damnedest to do so. In response, Daniel gave something of a weak smile. I know you didn't take my proposal seriously, and I'm still not sure whether my mana capacity will grow enough to match yours. But I don't want to give up, he said, exhaling beside me as we trained. I glanced in his direction, and what I saw immediately stirred my heart. When he turned to face me, I found myself unable to look away from his deep gray eyes. And that's why I want to ask you again, if our mana capacities do match, will you accept my proposal? I want to prepare myself before you refuse me in public. My heart pounded in earnest as I was caught up into his deadly serious gaze. But at the same time, warning bells were ringing in my head. I knew not to trust men so easily, and the things Hashit had once told me soon began run through my mind. Ilgner has nothing at all going for it, and yet you refuse to change that. What man will want to marry you when the seat of Gib is right there, and you aren't even trying to take it? And you personally, worthless. There'd be nothing good about marrying into your family. Do you seriously think any man would want to marry into such a country bumpkin province? That's hilarious. His words reminded me of the way everyone had reacted when I canceled our engagement to protect Ilgner. My breath caught in my throat. The memories were suffocating. Bridget? Daniel, what do you think of Ilgner, I asked, fixing him with a scrutinizing stare. Did he see any value in marrying into my province? That was the most important question of all to me, and I refused to accept any white lies or deflections. That's a very sudden question, he said, his gaze wandering for a moment. A smile then touched his lips, and the look in his eyes seemed to soften. I think it's a great place. The people are kind and genuine. The Geeb has a good heart, too. A lot of people say there's nothing here, but you now have Lady Rosamund's support, and it's only a matter of time before the paper-making industry blooms. I'm sure Hashit's going to be cursing himself soon enough. Plus, I can feel how much more lively you are here, Bridget. You're even cuter here than you are in the Noble's Quarter. Even in the darkness, I could tell how embarrassed he was, and the feeling somehow seemed to carry over to me, too. Daniel cleared his throat. Well, I answered your question. Will you answer mine? I'm still waiting on an answer. He hadn't mocked Ilgner for being a country province, and he accepted me for who I was here. Plus, he was genuinely working to expand his mana quality over the next year. What more could I ask for? I pressed a hand against my chest to contain my racing heart and extended my other hand toward him. Your proposal brought me much happiness, Daniel. I'll be waiting for you at the night of next year's star-binding, and this time I'm not saying it for appearance's sake. Yeah, because there's nobody out here. Really? Another one? How much longer? Staying in Ilgner, the ringing of a bell resounded through the air and must have been designed as though the sound would travel far distances because it was much louder than the one I was used to hearing at Ehrenfest's temple. The bell at the farmer's winter mansion rang in turn as if responding to the Geebs, and so my day in Ilgner began with a distant and a nearby bell chiming together. Morning, Lutz. Is Damien up yet? I asked. Damien was so used to being woken up by attendants, the first bell wasn't always enough to get him out of bed. Oh, so this is Gil. Okay. Lutz chuckled. When's the last time he overslept? He's been getting up at first bell with us for days now. It's when you get too used to things that you let your guard down, and that's when you're most likely to mess up. Lady Rosamund warned me about that herself. Oh, yes, Gil. She always did say something like that whenever you messed up. Salim interjected. I outshot him a glare in response, and with that we headed for this river with our wash basins in hand. A short climb down a hill beside the Geeb's mansion led us to a smallish river where we'd wash our faces, clean ourselves, and overall got ready for the day. Despite it being summer, the sun had only just risen, so the water was pretty cold. Les was always like, why not just wait until the afternoon? But in the temple, it was an important tradition to take care of such matters in the morning. Alright, that's done. Damien, you've still got bubbles in your stuff. You've got to scrub harder. Once we're cleaned and ready, we used our wash basins as buckets for scooping up our water. Just like in the temple, our first job in the morning was to fill the water jugs in the side building's kitchen. Otherwise, we would need to walk all the way to the forest every time we wanted to wash our hands. Morning, outsiders. Seems like today's fish harvest is going to be a good one. Hope you're looking forward to it, one villager said to us. Residents of the nearby farming town were here drawing water as well, so we exchanged some idle chit-chat as we went about our work. Nice. I asked the chef to hunt for some jor to go with them. Sounds good, thanks. The Geeb's gonna love to hear that we're having jor tonight. Oh, and you, big guy, you're gonna spill half your water on the journey back if you keep wavering like that. Huh. The farmers all laughed as Damien wobbled around with his bucket of water. He had lived something closer to the life of a noble with so many servants in his family house, which meant that he had no experience when it came to cooking, cleaning, or washing clothes. He was having a harder time living in Ilgner than anyone. Initially, Damien's plans had been to spend some of his own money to hire a servant in Ilgner, but all the townsfolk turned him down. They had their hands full with their own jobs, and now learning to make paper, so they didn't have time to take care of someone else too. On top of that, the trading of goods here was generally done through bartering, which meant the average citizen neither had nor needed such money in the first place. Well, that's what happens when there aren't any stores here. I was real shocked when I heard that traveling merchants just do business with the Geeb, who keeps everything stored in his mansion. And so Damien, unable to hire a servant due to how differently people viewed money here, had no choice but to care for himself. During his first 3 days, he was so incompetent that all the townsfolk started to wonder how he was even still alive. Sure, they were currently laughing at him for being all wealthy, but the fact that they were doing that instead of just outwardly feeling sad for him was genuinely a huge improvement. Seems like we just need one more bucket, I said. No, you know what to do. Salim, Damien, let's go. Fill everyone's flask with drinking water. We used the river for a lot of things, but we didn't drink from it. Instead, we filled our leather flasks that we brought to the workshop with the much sweeter mountain water from a spring behind the mansion. Damien sighed with relief. The spring was closer than the river, and no amount of poor form could make water spill from a capped flask. We grabbed enough flasks for everyone, then started making our way there with Salim. Since it would be time for breakfast when we finished drawing water, I decided it would probably be smarter to have someone start preparing the food. I went ahead and tossed out the orders. Volk, go slice some bread. Bart, could you grab some milk for us? Lutz, who had been filling water jugs with us, responded with a nod. He dropped his now empty wash basin and ran off to the workshop where some fresh milk should have just been delivered. There was no breakfast in Nildner without milk. Almighty King and Queen of the endless skies, who doth grace us with thousands upon thousands of lives to consume. Almighty Eternal Five, who rule the mortal realm. I offer thanks and prayers to thee, and do take part in the meal so graciously provided. The others followed my example and spoke their prayers before grabbing some hard bread. Breakfast was a quick meal consisting of any leftovers from the previous day's supper, and that wasn't just because we were visiting and hadn't had any food prepared for us. Even the Geeb and his family usually ate leftovers for breakfast since their servants had farm work to do so well. Bleh, I miss Lady Rosemine's leftovers in the temple. Ilgner baked all its bread in batches once every 10 days, which meant what we were having now was hard and dry to the point that it was completely inedible without first being soaked in a liquid of some sort. Every morning we spent here, I was stuck with the urge to pray in thanks for the milk that came with it. This truly makes me yearn for Lady Rosemine's soup, Nolt murmured. Since it was served everywhere back home, at the temple, the planting company, and even the Offmer company, everyone here was dreaming of the same delicious soup. Too bad we can't just make it here. That'd mean leaking the recipe. It's unfortunate, yes, but we must be grateful that we can eat here rather than in the main building, Volk added. I gave a hard nod in agreement. We initially had our food in the mansion with the Geeb servants so that it wouldn't need to be brought out to us, but Lutz had managed to negotiate for us to eat in the side building by saying that we didn't want to wrap the locals up in the temple's eating customs. During these negotiations, he had said that I needed to eat before anyone else as one of Lady Rosemine's attendants. That really annoyed me at first since it came across like I was being selfish. I wasn't going to demand that Ilgner mimic divine gifts, and Lutz knew from our time gathering in the forest that I didn't mind eating with everyone else, so I really hadn't been able to understand it. But when he explained he wanted us to avoid fighting over food with the townsfolk, everything made sense. In my eyes, Ilgner's way of eating kinda sucked, so I was really glad about not being dragged into it. Anyway, today we need to work on the inner bark. Volk, Bartz, and Salim can explain the process to everyone. Be sure to teach them how to peel off the outer bark while the inner bark is boiling with the ash. Understood. As we ate, we discussed who would be doing what today. Unlike in the temple workshop here in Ilgner, age was important when it came to giving orders. The adults wouldn't listen to me or Lutz since we were still young, so teaching the locals what to do was up to the Grey Priests. I would simply give them instructions ahead of time, then work with Lutz on developing new types of paper using wood local to the province. Changing the amount of Tororo used and keeping it all recorded wasn't possible for the illiterate townsfolk. After finishing breakfast and washing the dishes, we cleaned the side building and workshop. That wasn't nearly as large as the temple, meaning the whole process was finished relatively quickly, and as second bell was now coming up, it was time for the person on food duty to head into the kitchen. Damien, you're on food duty today, yeah? Seems like they're harvesting some fish today, and they want George to go with it. Good luck, I said, cheering him on. But Damien just grimaced. He hated food duty now more than anything else. Why, oh why, doesn't Ilgner have any stores? It'd be so much easier to just buy ingredients at the Offmer company, he groaned. The most important job of the person on food duty was gathering ingredients for that day's meals, since there weren't any stores around that they could be bought from. The mountain had plenty of vegetables and fruit since it was summer, and hunting animals would give more than enough meat. It was surprisingly easy to fish in the river, too, and unlike the fish that could be caught near Ironfest, they didn't stink at all. The fact that it was so easy to get a full day's worth of ingredients was shocking to us since we were so used to buying most of ours with money. Preparing food Ilgner style was also pretty simple. You just chopped whatever stuff you had and cooked it. This was then flavored with salt at most, and while that kind of made us want to scream since we had so many incredible recipes in our heads that we had to keep secret, it at least meant that the meals didn't take much work to prepare. Would you shut up, Damien? We go through this every time you're on food duty. I mean, we get it. Your grandpa runs a huge food store, but he's the one who forced us to take you here. If you've got time to complain, go out and start gathering your dinner already. You'll be working like a Grey Priest in no time, Lutz said, forcing a basket and knife into his hands. This is going to be a full day of work, all right? Be sure to look for anything that might make good Tororo or paper, too. With that, Damien slumped his shoulders and sadly exited the workshop. He'd probably come back exhausted after getting mocked to death by Ilgner children, but that too would be a good experience for him. Well, not much he can do but try his hardest. We were just so surprised about how different Ilgner was from Ehrenfest, but we had at least spent the last 2 years gathering in the forest and making paper in the workshop. Damien had no such experience to draw from. We're here. What are we going to do today? Karya asked, bringing several townsfolk with her to the workshop after third bell. She was a female servant working in the Geeb's mansion, having been assigned to take care of us by Geeb Ilgner himself, but rather than being our maid or anything like that, she mainly served as a line of communication between us and the town, doing things like informing the Geeb when we needed improvements in the workshop. Damien had in fact tried to hire Karya to be a servant, but she shot him down hard. The heck do you think you are, commoner boy? You're an adult. You can take care of yourself. She did, at his request, ask the other townsfolk whether anyone would be willing to serve him, but the other responses he got weren't much different. Today we'll be boiling the inner bark and ash to bring out its whiteness. That'll take about 1 bell, so in the meantime, we're planning to peel off the black outer bark. Did y'all bring knives? Volk and Bart began to fetch the tools and ash, while Salim started explaining the process to the townsfolk, Karya included. As this went on, Lutz, Nolt, and I made progress on the new paper, occasionally glancing their way. Lutz, Nolt, how'd it go? I asked. They grabbed the paper samples that had been drying outside and started lining them up on the table. We were experimenting with using Degrova leaves in place of adils and shrambugs, and it seemed to be working well. We touched the finished sheets and wrote on them with ink to see how this fared. This is a good mix for the Bookworm paper. Renfin will need a bit more Degrove added in, and Charisse, no good again. Looks like it just doesn't work with Degrova at all, Litz reported. Despite all the other types of wood turning into paper just fine, the Charisse alone simply broke apart before it could solidify. Tweaking the recipe wouldn't matter, the materials just weren't mixing well. As it poked at the slightly yellowish blob of transparent Degrova, Nolt gathered it up alongside the bits of Charisse. Shall we give it up on making it work with Degrova and simply experiment with adils and shrambugs once we return to Ehrenfest? Using adils and shrambugs might solve it, yeah, but didn't Lady Rosemine say the paper needed to be made using stuff we can find in Ilgner? Pretty sure she did, I said with a sharp frown. Given that we were setting up the workshop here, the materials need to be found locally, so we didn't have the money to import them from other provinces. Lutz crossed his arms. I was talking to Damien about this earlier. The white bark can be preserved once it's ready, and you can pack a ton of the stuff into a single crate, making the papers easier in Ehrenfest, so the bark itself might end up a hotly traded commodity for Ilgner. So you're planning to sell the Shreese bark as a product on its own? Yeah, it'll naturally have to wait until we've made sure it works with adils and shrambugs, but there's a chance it'll end up being a key product for provinces that don't have suitable trees to make paper from. It might not have worked with Degrova, but as long as it could successfully be mixed with other ingredients, Charisse bark could become an important product for Ilgner to sell. My eyes widened. I hadn't considered it from that angle at all. Wow, so Damien can be useful at times, huh? After what we've seen, I've never thought I'd see the day. He's hardly self-sufficient, but he is the son of a very successful store owner. He's got a keen eye for new products and can spot ways to make a profit in no time at all. We could learn a lot from him, Lutz said, glancing out the window. He almost sounded a little frustrated. Okay, we'll take Damien's advice here. For now, we'll just use our Charisse wood for the newbies to practice with. No, try and narrow down the Renfin to Degrova ratio a little more. Could you do the same as yesterday, but gradually add some more Degrova? Make sure to note down how much that changes things. Understood. At my request, Noel stood up and made his way to the shelf with the Degrova on it. Gil, how about we experiment with the Tropperless next? Let's suggest that old guy brought us a bunch that were ripening early, right? The old man who had hiked the mountain with us when Lady Rosemine was here had given us some white Tropperless, which ripened at the end of summer and apparently weren't edible. You could get a sticky juice by crushing them. I'm just looking forward to working with some new stuff, I replied. To think we're going to be one step closer to the new paper. Yeah, but it's not so fun when you think about how long it'll take us to get the recipe right. Let's not continue talking as we crush the Tropperless. The process took a surprising amount of strength thanks to their tough outer layer of skin. Enough that I realized we should have gotten Noel to help out since he was a lot stronger than us. But all we could do was regret our mistake while crushing one fruit after another, and with each one they got stickier and stickier. Guess that should do it. These really are sticky though, huh? Get the cloth, Let's grab the cloth we filtered the juices through and picked out the tiny chunks of skin and fruit that were stuck to it. We then mixed our fiber water with Bookworm, the wood we were most used to working with, and swished it around in the smallest suceta we kept around for when we were doing these experiments with paper. We started off with a small amount of tropperlays, using a big spoon to gradually add more until we had created 5 different sheets of varying thickness. We would select the best paper from among them and use that to narrow down the recipe even further, as we always did. 4th bell rang right as we finished laying the 4th kind of paper onto the drying bed. It was time for lunch. No eating until we're done cleaning up, I yelled. It was important to make that clear, otherwise the Overlord townsfolk would abandon their duties and rush out of the workshop on the spot. We know. Enough with the shouting already, we get it. Karya said, her cheeks puffed out unhappily, but it wasn't that simple. She had been ordered by the Geeb to come to the workshop each day to learn the paper-making process, but everyone else casually dropped it when they didn't have any other work to do. Or dropped in when they didn't have any work to do. They were the ones I was calling out to. Once those who had practically tried to spring for the workshop finished cleaning up, I locked the door and we all headed to the Geeb's mansion. As it turned out, locking doors wasn't something that was really done in Ilgner. I had asked Karya how else she was going to stop people from stealing things, but she just blinked at me in confusion and said, there aren't any thieves here. Like, what would they even do with the stuff they took? I couldn't even argue back, since our perception of what was normal was just so different. But we still always locked the workshop door just in case. Plus, it might not have been an issue here, but getting ourselves into a habit of not locking doors would prove to be a big problem when we went back to Ehrenfest. Gil, may I have Volk carry my things so that I can go and assist Damien? Noel asked, sounding worried. I looked up and spotted Damien in the distance, wobbling over on shaky legs. Everyone's lunch was in his hands, and his arms and legs looked as though they were about to give out. I instantly understood that Noel was afraid he would drop all our food, so I gave a nod and pretended him to go and help. Hey, Lutz, you really think it's a good thing to have Damien on food duty this evening, too? Up to this point, we had put different people on food duty for lunch and for dinner. This morning, Lutz said that Damien would need to do both himself, but it was pretty clear from a glance that this might not have been possible for him. Lutz raised an eyebrow. Merchants are always scheming to make things go their way. He may look exhausted, but there is more composure in his expression by the day. It's proof he's got energy to spare. Don't fall for his tricks. There's no need to go soft on him. And so we had our lunch of salted vegetable soup with hard bread and fresh fruit from the mountains, then returned to the workshop after sending Damien back out for dinner. Hey, Gil, come look at this. Aren't those drying way too quickly, Lutz asked, directing me to the drying bed. The paper laid out on the board to be squeezed dry was already going stiff. Let's try taking them outside for a bit. Like, not to stick them onto the boards one by one to dry, but just taking the whole drying board outside. I want to see what happens if we leave it out there until the evening. Noticing that the paper made with tropperlay dried unusually fast, Lutz and I took the drying bed with the experimental sheets on it outside. The paper started to whiten under the sun, and we could see it hardening before our eyes, with the sheets made using tropperlay drying the fastest. Lutz and I exchanged looks. Seems like it won't even take until the evening. We should probably keep our eye on it, huh? Yeah, we can't even risk looking away. I've got a feeling the paper will turn into something else entirely if we just leave it here. We all grabbed ink and some boards to write down any changes as they happened. The sheets started to turn all soaky as they continued to dry, becoming so white that they even began reflecting the sun. Lutz, is it just me or is this one shrinking? Looks like the first and last sheets are totally different sizes. Out of the 5 sheets of paper, the one with the most tropperlay was visibly shrinking as it hardened. The others would all cave in slightly when poked, leaving a small indent, but this one didn't warp in the slightest. Its surface was already firm. If this is a quality exclusive to tropperlay, then it's going to be an Ilgner export for sure. Let's try it out with some different types of wood tomorrow. Let's not continue to carefully watch the tropperlay paper transform until 5th bell, by which point it's completely dried out. Hey, Lutz, should we try peeling it off the drying bed? Just be gentle. You feel how hard the surface is? It might break apart like messed up Bookworm paper. Might not be dry underneath either. Keeping Lutz's warnings in mind, I took the sheet made with the most tropperlay and delicately peeled it away. It was hard and smooth, but it came right off without snapping. It's not breaking. Lutz murmured, impressed. He attempted to break the bend the new type of paper, and it curved beautifully without any signs of breakage. We then tried writing on it with ink, which didn't really stay on the paper with the most Tropperlay in it, but it came out perfectly fine on all the other prototypes. There wasn't any blotting on the sheets either. It was paper, just paper that felt weird. Gil, the stuff ended up pretty strange. You think it'll be any good for books? Let's ask, filling the air with a strange fluttering sound as he flipped to the sheets. That wasn't a question I could answer yet, so I simply shrugged. Who knows? Our job is just to make new paper. We can let Lady Rosemine worry about how it's going to be used. Good point, Let's said with a chuckle, continuing to leaf through the pages. Let's ask Eve Ilgner to get this to Lady Rosemine as soon as possible then. I want to see what she ends up making with it, and I definitely want Heidi to find out what ink suits it best. I stretched out a sheet of paper, holding it over the setting sun. In that moment, I felt as though I could already hear Lady Rosemine say, Good job, Gil, you're incredible. And the afterword. Okay, I'll get to work on everything, and I'll see everybody next time. In the next book.